Record it. Okay, guys, welcome. I'm here with Robyn Johnson, one of the smartest people I know in the Amazon industry, and easily the nicest person.
Oh, thank you.
How are you, Robyn?
I'm awesome.
So do you want to start by telling people your story? I love your story, and this is one of those stories where once you hear Robyn's story and what she can help you with, there's no reason at all that you shouldn't be successful on Amazon. There's no excuses left.
Yeah, because I really was like the unlikely entrepreneur. Like you would not, like I didn't have like an entrepreneurial bone in my body. I actually worked for like the least capitalistic organization out there, which I used to be a youth minister. I worked for a church and I loved what I did. I loved getting to watch these young people become these amazing adults. And, I was like, I get paid to go to Disneyland. How much better can my life get? Crawling over people at 4 a.m., making sure kids aren't kissing on the bus, all that stuff. And it was awesome. I had my son and things got a little tighter financially. When you work for the church, they say the benefits are out of this world because the pay is not. And I know some of you have heard that joke a couple times, but I'm sticking with it. We started, my daughter was about 6 weeks old when I went to a Dave Ramsey event. My friend paid for my Dave Ramsey ticket because I couldn't afford it. And I remember she helped me pay for a financial piece, and I was doing Dave Ramsey's thing, and I was, we had saved up our emergency fund, and I was driving back from a trip from California, and I was listening to the CDs, and one of the CDs, they were CD6, he was talking about extra income, and there was this lady that was buying strollers and reselling them on Craigslist, and I was like, I could do that. In the meantime, I've got I think she was like 3 or 6 month old child in the back, and I've like a less than a 4-year-old child too. So, great time to start a business. And I was working full time. And so what I started doing is the next day we went to the bank. I took out $100. I can still remember the 520s in my hand. Like it just seemed like $1 million. It was like, okay, if this doesn't work.
It's almost $1 million Canadian.
Yeah.
The exchange rate.
That is awesome. Yeah. So yeah, it was a lot. That was a lot of money for me. I mean, I haven't told a lot of people this, but we were so strapped for money. I was advertising babysitting on Craigslist. And there was this family that was dropping off their kid at like 10 p.m. And then I'd have to wake up at 4 in the morning to take the kid back out to them. I don't know if they were running a nightclub or what, but it was, and that was just like, I was like, man, that extra $40 a week helps so much, so we were so tight financially. So we didn't have a lot of capital to start. But we sold on eBay, and then we started selling on Amazon. Eventually, we built our own website, and we built up to 7 figures in the first several years. And it, some of the times that were the toughest are some of my best memories. When you hit that big find and you're like delirious because you've been packing for like 24 hours straight. My husband got in this like joke fight once about me being like a packing ninja, because I was like, you're too slow. I'm a packing ninja. And then like somebody called me a ninja like 3 weeks later, and he's like, oh no, please do not start the ninja thing again. But all of those pieces were instrumental. So we built up, we've taught over 7,000 people how to do wholesale. As far as, we've had a lot of people take our courses over the last couple of years. Now we do a mix. For a long time, we did a really heavy RA in addition to wholesale. We still do some RA, but we've pulled back a lot because, online arbitrage has kind of sucked away some of our honey holes. Mm-hmm. And our staff has changed. The last year we lost 2 of our key staff members to natural turnover. Nobody's going to stay forever. But we had to really kind of really look at profit per hour and what is the best use of our time. And so we're doing a majority of wholesale now. We do it 2 ways. We do straight wholesale accounts where we look at the account, we see if it's profitable, and we just, we buy and resell the items wholesale. And then we also do brand consulting, where there's some companies where it doesn't make sense for us to buy it wholesale, but instead we sell it on consignment and we take a percentage of gross sales. So from the brand's perspective, it's very similar to like what they would pay a sales rep for. Yeah. That's my long 7-year history in 5 minutes.
So at the conference, you're going to be doing a talk, 7 steps to 7 figures.
Yes.
Now, there's probably a little bit, some more steps involved in there. But what was the trajectory for you starting, at a measly $100? How long did it take for you to get there? And also interested in learning, hearing about some of the things that you learned along the way as well.
So it's kind of all a blur now. But it was within the first 3 to 4. I'd have to actually go back and look because, for a while I was saying like 3 years ago, and then I realized a couple years had passed, and I was like, wait, that number's not right anymore. But the first year, so the first year from June, and when we really started Amazon in like June or July of 2011, and then by the end of that first year, we grossed 180,000, which by today's standards, that's like chump change, right? But at the time, there wasn't a lot of people doing that. I remember really looking up, and I still really look up to Angie Short Cranford, because she was like a year ahead of me. I felt like I was like shining star, and it was. I think the biggest thing that I see right now in people trying to get to 1 million too fast is patience and giving yourself time to learn. If you try to just have the capital, like borrow capital to just kind of make it work, what happens is sometimes it works out great and you become $1 million seller and you can brag on Facebook and it's awesome. And then sometimes it doesn't work. And that's when people call crying. And I'm not exaggerating, especially this time of year. People who would say, I didn't realize it, but I thought I was doing the right things. But when my taxes were all finally done, I realized I lost money last year. Or, the year before I was grossing 500,000 and I was taking home 100. And now I'm doing 1.75 million and I only took home 80. So I'm not quite sure what happened. So the biggest thing is patience, and giving yourself time to build those up. It was several years before we hit that $1 million mark. Now, if we had some of the tools and the capitalization, I think we would have tried to rush it a lot more. Luckily, our credit was horrible, so there was no rushing it, for us, because we'd had no money for so long, right? Yeah. But I think that as you're looking at growing, you want to make sure that you're growing with the end in mind. I think that's the most important thing, that we're not just focusing on getting to 1 million because it's 1 million,
It's such an arbitrary number that
yeah.
so many people focus on. Oh, I've gone from 6 to now I'm a 7-figure seller, which at the end of the day, it doesn't even really matter all that much, because I know there's a ton of people who will post screenshots, stuff like that, and I've never been a screenshot kind of person, because like you said, I could be selling $1 million a year, but I could have spent 980,000 to reach that goal, and it's not really I don't really define that as success at all.
Because if there's something that I think that we really don't talk about enough in our space, is the difference between gross margin and net margin. And as we're looking at our products, so if you look at like your balance statement or your profit and loss, if you look at your profit and loss, there's your income, and then there's a little section where it says gross margin, and right above that there's all your cost of goods. So the things that would be in cost of goods would be obviously the cost of the products that you sold. The amount that you spent to prep centers would also be included in there, and your Amazon fees should be in that top line above your gross margin. If you have a really low gross margin, so if you only have like a 10 or 15% gross margin, then that means that you have to have a ton of revenue just to cover very small your fixed expenses. So one of the things that I see is the fastest path for people to have healthy growth is to know two numbers. And that is your fixed expenses, how much you spend every month to keep your business alive. And the reason we need to know that is because it gives us our second number. When we match up that with kind of what our average ROI is, and we make some assumptions about Amazon fees, we can kind of get an idea of where our break-even point is. So if you have $1,000 a month in Amazon in related expenses, so you've got tactical arbitrage, and you've got this cool Bolo list group over here, and then you've got a cool kids club over here that you're a part of. all of those things add up. And that means that maybe your first $3,000 to $10,000 in gross sales, depending on what your average ROI is, you might just be keeping your business from cannibalizing itself.
Mm-hmm.
You don't actually start making any money until way after that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good point. What would you say, like, I know from when you started, even from when I started in May 2015, June 2015, there's been a vast number of changes through Amazon's, not only their algorithm, but their policies and whatnot, the gating, branding. Um, what would you say to newer sellers now or newer entrepreneurs looking to get into the Amazon space?
So, okay, the funny thing is, I'm part of this really great organization, this really great nonprofit of other internet merchants. And it's funny to watch the different phases of people that have, people who started like 2007, 2010. And you might think that the people in 2007 have this immense advantage, right? Because especially if they were wholesale before, scan power and, all of those things ever existed, they should have this huge foothold because they were able to talk to companies before anybody knew about Amazon
Mm-hmm.
and build those relationships. The funny thing is, more often than not, the longer somebody's been in Amazon, the less they think that Amazon is still a viable option. So people who've been in there a long time are like, oh, I can't make any money on Amazon. Marketplace is ruined. I'm like, really? Because this guy just made $4 million. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of things have changed. So if you're new, you have an advantage because you didn't know it used to be this other way. Now, there are tools that you have that I could have only dreamed of. You know how like your parents joke like you had to walk uphill to school both ways? Well, like back in the day when I
Yeah,
was a seller, scan power didn't, and maybe I'm delusional, but this is how I remember it. So when I started, scan power didn't actually tell you how much Amazon fees were and what your total was going to be after that. You just had to guess.
yeah.
So, I remember him telling the 3 times rule and me being like, wait, that's why we're not making any money. I was just trying to double it. And, like there was all this kind of like guessing, the idea of dimensional weight, the
Mm-hmm.
idea of, I had no idea what a gross margin was for years.
Mm-hmm.
So you have access to information and you have access to courses that didn't exist. I mean,
Yeah.
so yes,
Literally so many tools out there that will literally do anything you need it to do.
I think that if you want to make it in this business, you need to get really comfortable being uncomfortable. And you have to look at all of those things that everyone's like, oh, see, Amazon's ruined now. You can't make any money. Then you have to say, great, goodbye. And you have to say, okay, now within this new rule, how do I make my business profitable?
Mm-hmm.
And when you come with a solution mindset instead of a problem mindset, now some people are like, well, the world is just not always fair. And, sometimes bad things happen. And sometimes it's not fair. But if I'm not doing this, I'm going to have to find something else to do. So before I do that, I want to make sure I've exhausted every way to make this work.
Mm-hmm.
I still see Amazon as wide open space. It's a different kind of wide open space, to be honest. Though it's not the wild west. I mean, when I started, people were like buying things at flea markets. I could go into Toys R Us and I could spend $3,000 in an hour any day of the week.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. It didn't matter even how long it had been since I'd been there. I could just do it all the time. Now you can't go into Toys R Us and spend $3,000 a week unless you've got some really great systems that are set up. Now it's more difficult. But the nice thing is that there's still a lot of opportunity. And as we start to work with different brands, as we start to see different ways to kind of use the Amazon system within the way that it's designed to be used, then there's I see more opportunities. It's not the wild west. I mean, there was a point where people were opening up like the Keurig. Remember I don't know if you were around for this. People were opening up the Keurig things from Costco, and they were touching them with their hands and putting them in paper bags and stapling them and then putting it
Yes.
in ovens. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Like, you can't get away with that stuff
No,
anymore.
no, there's a lot of things you can't get away with. I'm glad you made that point. The real only the real only changes is it's constant changes. It's always, we're always evolving. Things are always evolving, and if you don't change, you're going to get left behind. What
And if you're
was?
doing well, that means don't get complacent. So if you're doing well
Mhm,
right now, it's the moment you rest on your laurels, you start to become obsolete.
mhm. So I'm interested to know in your first year of selling, what was that point for you where, like, did you ever hit a point where you're like, you know what, I'm just not cut out for this. Like, what are we even doing with this? Because, going from $100 to, probably 500, 1,000, like you made that transition. At what point did you run it? Obviously you ran into some hurdles, but what was that point for you?
So when we first started, Breaking Bad was first launch, it was first on, and I remember like we would be like peeling stickers, watching Breaking Bad. He's like, "I'm Walter," and I'm like, "You're bald like Walter," like it was like our joke. It was like, "Well, I wonder what the neighbors think." They see us pulling up and doing all this stuff,
Yeah.
and we felt like we were, like it felt weird and it felt wrong, and like wrong in a good, like it was like, oh, we stumbled upon this really great thing. There have been many times where I was like, this is not the right, what I'm a failure. I remember I went to an accountant, and I was having her, I was moving from one accountant to the other. So I brought in my books and I said, sometimes I don't even know if I'm doing well or if I'm doing poorly because, people only share revenue numbers and nobody shares. So I don't really know how I'm doing. And do I have a real business or not?
Hmm.
And I was like, and she laughed at me. I was like, this is not funny. That is not funny. And she's like, you have a real business. I was like, I do? She's like, yeah, I'm looking at your numbers here, and you're in the top 2% of women owned businesses in the United States. You have a real business.
Wow.
So, I mean, and there's still been moments, where we try to grow too fast and we put ourselves in cash flow crunches. And, sometimes that there was one where that really put us really far back for a really long time. And, we're just kind of healing from the emotional, even though it was years ago, we're starting to heal from the emotional and, the stress of making all of that work,
Hmm.
because there is no break, and there's no way to know really how you're doing because people only share the bright and sunny side.
Yeah.
you know they don't share them. There was we first got our warehouse, and I remember the air conditioning not working, and we're in Arizona. It was August. It was like 98 degrees inside the air conditioned part, right? And it was like over 100 degrees in the warehouse part, and like Gabe's like, I think I'm gonna pass out. And I came in, I was like, you're all gonna quit because it's too hot, I can't get the air conditioning fixed. And I actually had to lay down on the warehouse floor and cry because I was like, I just can't do this anymore. But nobody shares that piece. They're
No,
like,
nobody shares it. I love that story. I love it because it's so real. Like it's so real. There are still times where I still, doing this for 3 full years now where I question myself daily, like, are you sure you know what you're doing? Or, I'll make bad buys. I think I have keep all figured out and everything, but I still make bad buys all the time. But it's just kind of the process involved of, you know, building a business, being an entrepreneur.
failure is like fertilizer. It stinks, but you need it to grow.
I love that. I'm going to start using that one.
It's really one of my favorites because I think that sometimes, I got not everybody likes Dave Ramsey. If you don't like Dave Ramsey, totally cool with that. But I went to one of the events and I actually got to go to his house and talk to him,
Yeah.
right? So I was like, how cool is it? I'm just drinking bourbon with Dave Ramsey, right?
Yeah.
But I was asking him, I was like, he had talked earlier in the day about how he has, a ton of crazy ideas and some of them work and some of them don't.
Hmm.
And I asked him, I was like, so do you have your staff members like try to talk you out of the bad ideas? And he looked at me like I was crazy, and he's like, no. He's like, all the crazy ideas, I just have to figure out if they're going to fail fast, and so I can move on to the good ones.
Yeah.
And so I think some of us feel like if we made a bad buy, that means we're bad sellers,
Hmm.
and it just means we made like who you are and your self-worth and your value is not tied to the amount that is in your bank account or your inventory turn rate or your gross sales rate. They're really independent, but it's easy to kind of tie them up together. So you feel like when you're doing well, you feel confident and you feel secure and you feel like you're bad, you know, I don't know if we what level of cursing we allow here, but like if you feel that, then you feel awesome. And then when you make a little mistake, then you're like, oh, see, I'm gonna fail. I'm gonna live in a van down by the river. It's not even gonna be a nice van. And I think that all of that is part of the process. And so that's one of the reasons why I think it's important to slow down your growth, is so that you can learn from each of these mistakes before you get to the next one. And, more money, more problems, it's a real thing, because so when you're in business, when you start your business, it's like a roller coaster. However, when you first start your business, it's like a kiddie roller coaster where it's like this, where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm $100 short. When you're $1,000,000 business, you're like, I'm $100,000 short this month. So it has a lot more stress. I think that if you give yourself the time to grow in a healthy way, grow as fast as you can in a healthy way, but make sure you're setting aside profits. Make sure you're paying yourself. I will tell you, there is never a good time to start paying yourself. It's like when people ask, like, when's a good time to have kids? They're never convenient. They poop, they barf. I mean, there's never a convenient time to have a little parasite inside you that's going to come out. It's never convenient. It's never going to be convenient for you to take money out of your business. It's always going to feel like you're taking food away from your child, right? Mm-hmm. But if you build a business that is not able to support you taking out even a little bit, then as you grow, what will happen is you'll box yourself into a prison cell. Whereas when you're ready to hire and you have the cash to hire, you're going to realize your items don't have the margin in them to hire somebody. And so you get stuck. The other thing is it causes like a psychological thing where you start to live to serve your business instead of having your business live to serve you. Your business should be a tool to help you survive. It should not be that you're a tool to help your business survive.
Yeah, that's such a great point. So you mentioned that you have helped over 7,000 sellers.
Yes.
On Amazon. Robyn's an OG. This is a veteran. She's been around she has experience. What would you say is kind of like a recurring theme or a pattern that you see in those who are not successful and those who are successful?
So I'm even going to split that a little further. So the people who are not successful, you're either too comfortable and you're just not hungry enough. This is hard work. This is not an easy business. It's not get rich quick. Anybody who's selling you that this is just 3 easy steps, they're misleading you, whether it's intentional or not. This is hard work. Retail arbitrage is a lot of physical work. Online arbitrage is a lot of data. Wholesale, a lot of data and relationships. So there is with people who are not successful, the biggest thing outside of just not doing the work, people are always like, what's your secret? And they lean in like, I'm going to tell them.
It's so true.
And you know what? Here's the secret. Consistent, unreasonable action. And when I say unreasonable, I mean, it's going to look to other people like it's a little crazy. But making that consistent, unreasonable action is important. As people grow, there's a certain point where in the beginning you're just trying to get proof of concept. Anything that comes in is good, and so money is hard, and money's hard as money is hard. There's a moment where that shifts. For me, it was like around $40,000 a month in gross revenue. I've seen some people have it at 200. I've seen some people have it at 10. But all of a sudden, you open up your eyes and you just see opportunity everywhere. You're like, I could do that. I could do that. I could do that. I could do that. I could do this, and you kind of get drunk on opportunity. And this is where I see a lot of businesses just completely bomb out, because you try to move from one sourcing method to another, from one business to another, and you try to bounce between different methods, and you're not making that consistent action. So that consistency drops out because you're chasing this shiny object, and so you never actually get any results. And I think that is the biggest thing, is as you grow, in the beginning, it's just hard work and it's elbow grease, and there's no way around that. But after a certain point, your no becomes more important than your yes. And it's making sure that you keep the main thing, and we don't take away an income source. So even if you don't like what you're doing right now, we don't want to completely get rid of it. We want to make sure that that's systemized so you have more free time so you can start another revenue stream, but we're not going to abandon it and go for something else unless there's a really good reason. Because, when you try to shift gears, sometimes you think, well, I'm doing this in RA, so I should be able to do this in wholesale. Sometimes it takes a while, and the cash flow is different, and the process is different. And so we want to make sure you do that in a nice gradual shift over, and so you can let go of that income as you no longer need it. but we want to make sure you don't try to do that too fast.
Yeah, I really love that you brought that up because I know kind of the common theme around like building your Amazon business. So you're gonna start with thrift or I guess RA,
Yeah.
and then you're gonna switch to OA, and then you're gonna go wholesale, and you're gonna go private label. And people think that's like almost in a sense like a natural progression, but it's just those models all have their own things that you have to deal with. So
And they attract different personality types too.
mhm, mhm,
I know people who kick behind at books and thrifts, but they cannot do wholesale to save their life. And I know people who do well in wholesale who have tried PL and, it hasn't worked for them. I know people who've kicked behind at PL and then they try to do RA. And, if people think it's just people moving this way, I will tell you there's a lot of people moving the other way too.
sure,
People just aren't as big and bold about it.
yeah,
Because everybody feels like this, it's like a first grade, second grade, third grade kind of thing.
mhm.
There's a lot of people who get to private label and then they go back and say, you know what, that was really cash intensive and really stressful. And did you know Chinese New Year and all of these things that happen and
Yeah.
safety testing and dead babies and all of the things that can happen with private label. So, I think that you have to look at what kind of personality are you. If you are somebody that's gregarious, that you like talking to people, wholesale is could be a really good fit.
Mhm.
Idea of having a phone call makes you need a Xanax, wholesale might not be the right fit for you
Mhm.
because it's about relationships. And so you have to build relationships. Now, 5 years ago, it wasn't that way. It was just data crunching. So the same people who did well in OA did well in wholesale. That's shifted over the
Mhm.
last couple of years.
Yeah, and it will always continue to shift. It will always
Yes.
continue to shift, and even at a more granular level, like if you've always sold groceries, like moving into something like shoes, like it's just a completely different game altogether when you're moving just even between different categories, let alone sourcing models.
And that's where people get cocky and they make mistakes
Hmm.
because they're like, well, I've been rocking it over here. I'm just going to go take some of this person's market and share. Just because you understand groceries and expiration dates doesn't mean you understand how cash intensive variation listings can be
Yeah.
in apparel listings. So it's a whole different monster. We actually recommend that people have diversity within their categories. So I don't think that you should have more than, you should kind of have, so my friend Laurel taught me about making money rules. So the money rules are like, so I'm not going to have more than 50% of my investments in this one thing, or I'm not going to, any investment over $1,000, I'm not, or $5,000, I don't make that without talking to my husband and sleeping on it for 24 hours, whatever those rules are. You need to kind of have rules for your Amazon account too. So, I don't want one brand to be making up more than 50% of my listings. I don't want I don't want to have more than 75% in one category because as we've seen this year with clothing and, the year before that or 2 years before with books, if they make a big category change,
Yeah.
then your entire business has to
Yeah.
change.
Yeah, I know a few people in those very situations where they were just books and then the fee came in. It's like my business is gone overnight. Um, Dixon has a question. He's actually he's traveling and he just got off the bus. So his question was, I'm interested to know if Robyn ever thought she would be where she is now.
No, apps. I would have laughed at you. I would have laughed so hard. Um, I, I kind of thought I would stay at the church for a long time, and maybe if I had a business, it would be like. I remember when I first started, I thought it's like maybe I'll open one of those like kid consignment resale places. I was like maybe I could do that one day. Like that was like like I didn't really think that I would ever be flying to multiple cities in a week to give presentations and talking to giant companies about their Amazon presence and like it. I think that that's one of the cool things about becoming an entrepreneur is it makes you face a lot of those inner demons, all those things that make you feel unsure about yourself. You have to work those things out. Best way to figure out all of your therapy scars that you need is to start a business. It brings it all right up to the
It's
top.
so true.
Right? so, I had to work through a lot of those, and it made me change my perception about my own self-worth. I definitely did not think that I was worthy to have a business like this for a long time. I had a lot of imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
Like, if they just knew what a hot mess I was. My Christmas tree is still up. I even posted about it, like, we're gonna get it down this week, ha ha ha, and still up, but like, I still get imposter syndrome sometimes, but I think that just have to keep going.
Exactly.
And I think the biggest question that you need to ask yourself is, because I see Simone ask, like, how do you not get overwhelmed when you see all these shiny objects? Because there are so many opportunities. So the way that I look at it is, you have to know where you're going. So the way to know where you're going is, if you think about, if time and money wasn't a consideration, you didn't have to worry about time, you didn't have to worry about money, what would you be doing with your life? Now, there's going to be a couple weeks where you're like, I'm just going to eat lobster and sit on the beach. But, after a while, the sand gets annoying. After a while, all the lobster starts to taste like soap.
Yeah.
So, after that, after you've indulged yourself a little bit, what are you going to do with your life? And then everything that you do that in your business, when you're looking at this opportunity, opportunity A or opportunity B, we want to say, what's going to get me to that end goal faster?
Mhm.
Which is going to lead me towards that great thing. So, if I know that I want to sail and, I want to be able to go on these long vacations and check out, then I can't go into any business model like the mattress store thing that people have been talking about. I can't do eBay thrifting, because as a long term, now I could use that as a step to get the capital to get to the next piece, right? But if I want to be able to sail and not have internet for weeks at a time, then I need to have a business that's very automated, that runs on its own,
Mhm.
right? If I know that I want to be able to go on missions, or if I want to be able to, maybe I want to build up to be somebody that works with really big companies as a coach, then I need to think about, that, is this opportunity really an opportunity, or is it a distraction?
Mhm.
And so each one of these things, you should see how it's bringing you closer to that end goal. So
Mhm.
that's kind of how we look. Now, there's some things that opportunities that you might use as a stopgap. Like, I need some extra cash flow, so I'm going to do this extra side hustle to bring in the cash flow, so I have Q4 money. That's okay. You
Yeah.
just want to make sure that we're focused on whatever your main business is, stays your main business, and that's where it gets your best energy. So we want to make sure that you're focused every day. You're focused on, what are the revenue producing activities that I need to be doing today.
K- Speaking on that, can you maybe elaborate a little bit? Let's say somebody's doing just retail arbitrage right now,
Mm-hmm.
and their goal for 2018 is they want to transition so that by the end of the year they're doing no more retail arbitrage. They're sick of the lines. They're sick of driving from store to store. What are some of the things that need to be put in place, and so what are some of the things that they need to do to ensure that they can smoothly move over to a different business model?
So first, you need to look at your business, and you need to make it as efficient as you can. So you need to look at, how can you streamline that buying. So with some clients, that means, I have them hire somebody that will just sit with them in the car. They drive from place to place, and they can answer emails. They can do research, the CEO, right? And is able to do stuff from store to store, or even rest, so that they have a good 2 hours to work on it in the evening, right? They have somebody in that person is helping them load the cart, so they get out of there faster. With some people, it's generating lists of things that their shoppers are going to pick. So, and then maybe you hire somebody like Karen Locker, or somebody you hire a VA, something to do something that you're already doing. And people will say, how do I know if I can afford that or not? You need to be consistently producing revenue. And then you need to look at the cost of that. So like, we want to think about it as arbitraging time.
Hmm.
Because I think that's a concept that we all understand. So what we want to do is, instead of saying, well, it's an expense, I don't want to spend the $300 because I want to save it for inventory. I think what we want to look and we want to say is, okay, so this is $300. So if she saves me 6 hours a month for $300, or let's just say 10, just for math sake. So she saves me 10 hours for $300 a month. What could I do in 10 hours? So we're going to basically be paying that accountant $30 per hour, right? 300 divided by 10 is 30. So if what can I be doing that I would be generating $90 in, gross, at least like in gross revenue, right? Or maybe 120 in gross revenue. So that I know that when it comes down to it, I'm going to profit more than it's going to cost me. So basically we're going to arbitrage, say I have a skill set that can bring in more than what it's going to cost me. So I'm going to buy 10, I'm going to buy 5 more hours at $30 an hour so I can make 90, right?
Yeah.
And you want to make sure you're looking at how much are you making on each item after all of your expenses? Because remember, we kind of toss around like the number, like make $1 million, I'm making 80,000. You're not really making that much, right? That's how much you're grossing. But we all kind of, I just slipped right now and said that, right? So you want to make sure that, you want to look at like, I can profit $60 or $90 per hour to pay for her 30. If you just gross 60, you're not going to make enough to cover that expense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think an important thing to note before you hire, make sure you have like your processes in place. You know exactly what your VA or your hire is going to be doing before they get there. Because I've admit I've made that mistake in the past. Like, yes, I want to hire out, and then I don't have a good process in place, and then it ends up cost me even more in time to have to train the person if everything's not right in the first place.
I think before you even hire a virtual assistant, before you even post the job, first you want to capture the system. So part of the problem in hiring a VA is people say, well, I'm gonna hire them and then I'm gonna train them. You're never going to have time, and it's going to be a haphazard kind of training. So I recommend that you capture the process. So as you're doing it, so you would say, okay, well, I'm going to I'm going to run reimbursements for my account, and as I'm doing it, I'm going to basically narrate it, exactly what I'm doing, and I'm going to use Camtasia or some other program to record that. Then I'm going to send it to a transcription service like rev.com, temi.com, gotranscript.com, have them transcribe what I said, and I'm going to format it so it's in nice, easy to view, step-by-step instructions. And then I'm going to look at it and I'm going to say, how can I make this 30 seconds faster? Just 30 seconds. So where can I make a couple of changes? Then you're going to rewrite it. If you made enough changes where you need to re-record it because maybe you changed the order of something, then you're going to do that. Once you have those steps done, then that is when you post. And the reason why we don't want to post before that is you might think, well, I need to have a VA that is really good at sourcing. But then when you get down to the steps that you actually trust them to do, it's really data entry. And so you can save a lot of money by hiring somebody who's just a data entry specialist versus hiring somebody who has already been trained in somebody else's sourcing method that might not even work for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good point. Okay, there's a question here. Where do you sell consignment? Do you want to maybe just speak about consignment first and then answer?
So basically what we do is we'll sell on either on the brand's account or we'll sell it through ours. And basically what it is we're basically selling wholesale, but we're saying we're not going to pay for the inventory until it sells. So they'll send us the inventory, and then once it sells, then what we do is then we give them a check. After we get our payout, we give them a check. So we pay them through Gusto as like a contractor. And so we're basically selling their items for them and then giving them their percentage after it sells. Kind of like what Amazon does with us, we're doing that with brands. We do that on brands that maybe have been selling directly to Amazon for a really long time, or maybe because they're a low-priced item, there's not enough margin to sell wholesale directly, but they do need somebody to manage those accounts.
Mm-hmm. Golem wants to know, how do you decide on your business model?
So So if you're doing a bunch of things, I'm just going to assume that somebody asking that is in the kind of that seeking mode. So if you're already doing something, you need to look at your numbers and see what's actually working. So go and look at your profitability by SKU and Inventory Lab, or go look at your gross revenue over the last 365 days. See what is actually producing the most profit. Whatever's working, double down on that. Even if it's not what you like, even if it's the piece of your business that you hate, double down on what's winning. Create as many systems as you can. We're going to buy some time to do another process that you love. I recommend that you have one stable main thing and one shiny object at a time. So you can have a shiny object, but you can only have one, but you got to commit to it for like at least 3 months, and have that intense focused action on them. So, I would look at what are your skill sets? How much capital do you have? So if you don't have a lot of capital, then you're going to be doing thrifting, or you're going to be doing retail arbitrage. Or online arbitrage. It makes me cringe when people say that they're going to get a huge loan so they can start wholesale. It's just pinning yourself into a corner. Debt has its place in business, but I think debt should be to accelerate a proven process, not to try something untested.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Dixon had a question. I guess this is a little bit back to where, so you started with $100, and you're well over 7 figures now. I imagine it's maybe both a gradual process, and perhaps, there's one instance where, so he wants to know, like, what was the turning point for you where you said, okay, yeah, I got this. I can do this. I have a real business now. When was that point for you?
So first, I've got bad news. There is no shining moment. There's no shining city on the hill. I think I might have told this story at the MBA, but like one time I asked my mentor, I was like, when does it stop being so scary? Like, when will I know? And I was like ugly crying. I was like, when will I know that I'm going to be successful? And she's like, I'm sorry, you'll never know.
Yeah.
Because part of being, especially in the space that we're in, we're always evolving. So just as we feel like we got our feet on the ground, there's some sort of policy change that happens that makes us change what we're doing again.
Yeah.
So, I have those moments about once every month where I'm like, okay, I've got it now. Now I'm good. And then, there's 12 other moments where I'm like, what if we're in a van down by the river? My coach actually was so tired of hearing the van down by the river. She's like, all right, so I have bad news. She's like, you're never going to be in a van down by a river. And I was like, how do you know? She's like, because if you had to, you'd figure out a way to sell used Kleenex to people, and you'd figure out something else. She's like, you're a business person now. You're never starting over. And that's what Sharon, my mentor, said. She said, even if you lost everything, there is no going back, because now you have a level of knowledge and you built this.
Yeah.
So if you built this and you're only wiser than you were when you first started it, even if you lose everything, you don't lose everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a bump, and it's being able to take those bumps with a grain of, like be able to save enough money to be able to take ride through those rough patches, and being willing to get up. You have to be willing to get back up again. And there's going to be times where you feel like you failed too much. And those are the moments usually where that you're right before something good.
Yeah. Yeah. Where people just quit too soon. They don't realize how close to success they are.
So my friend actually wrote a book on that. She wrote a book called 3 Feet from Gold.
Oh, 3 Feet from Gold.
Yeah, it's a Napoleon. So she does a lot of stuff with like Napoleon Hill, who wrote like Think and Grow Rich.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah.
I remember. Okay, so I can't believe it's almost been an hour already. I feel like we just got started. So if you guys have any additional questions for Robyn, please do ask before I let her go. Here's a question from Max: having a hard time convincing wholesale suppliers how bad their listings are and how useful having me sell their product would be. Any tips on what I can say to close them?
So one of the things we do is we do the paper slide. So if I've done some research, I already know. So I don't do this until after I've already run the price list. So I already know that this is profitable. So I don't convince brands that they need my help if I haven't done the numbers to see if I want to work with them. Because that's really frustrating for them, because then they spent 30 minutes on the phone with me. I finally convinced them, and now I don't want to buy anything. Mm-hmm. That's a bad experience for them. And they might be a good brand for you further down the road that you've now ruined forever. So only after I've got the price list do I have this conversation. And so I'll bring, I will say, maybe if I'm doing it virtually, it'll be, through a slide share or something along those lines. So if it's in person, I will actually slide the paper across the table and I'll say, I don't know if you noticed this, but this is an issue on your listing. And you have to actually, they won't believe you. So you have to actually show it to them. It has to be a screenshot. It has to be a piece of paper. and say, whether you do work with me or not, this is something you need to get fixed. In fact, I pulled your competitors' sales of, the knockoff of your product, which I know and is just not as good of a product. Did you know that they're outselling you 3 to 1? I don't care who you use, but your product's too good for it to just be like this. If you even just needed some consulting or wanted to get my opinion, I'd love to talk to you, but I completely understand your opinion on Amazon sellers because, a lot of people, they're just there for a cash grab.
Mhm.
Now, don't do that if you're this there for a cash grab. Don't do
Yeah.
that. Only if you really want to help them,
Yeah.
because we want to make a better experience for these brands, because they see us as dirty Amazon sellers because that's the way that they have been treated.
Yeah.
And I didn't really believe it until I started to see some of the things that some Amazon sellers do to these brands, and it made me a lot more compassionate to why they get so upset, and why this is life and death for them just as
Mhm.
much as our business is life and death for us.
Yeah. Arm yourself. Arm yourself with knowledge. And this wasn't any more apparent to me than when the last time I was at ASD, where the first dozen or so wholesalers and manufacturers that I approached, their very first question to me was, "Are you an Amazon seller?" And if my answer to that was yes, that's as far as I could get. But I started saying no. They asked, "Are you an Amazon seller?" No, not at all. And then so that would kind of they would lower their guard, and I would start having conversations with them. And then from that, later on, I would throw that back in after I've had a conversation with them. Well, by the way, I do sell on Amazon, but then I think that's a good tip for people going to ASD. Um, and speaking of which, you'll be there?
I'll be there. We're actually hosting. Internet Merchants Association is with me and Seller
Oh,
Labs and maybe one other sponsor. We're going to be doing a night at Peppermill. So we're going to have some appetizers, some free wine and beer. So you can come and mix and mingle. There's tons of networking events at ESD.
yeah.
If you have to pick one networking event versus another, I highly recommend that you pick one that's not a dinner. Because if it's a dinner, you get to talk to 2 people, maybe 3. If
Mhm.
it's something where you can sit down, pick up your drink, move away, move to something else,
Yeah.
that gives you an opportunity to talk to a lot of different people. So if it's, unless it's a small dinner, like less than 10 people, my recommendation is this more cocktail or, house party kind of thing. Be safe, obviously. Remember, you're there for business. You can get drunk any time of the year. We don't all need to get drunk right on ASD. So, but ASD is a great place to network.
Yes.
I think we have 21 or 23 educational classes from the same people that you see speaking at paid conferences. So is a great investment. Now people will say, is ASD a good show? For the networking and for the education? Yes. For straight shopping, if you can only shop one show, I don't recommend ASD. I recommend that you go to a small specialty show. ASD can be a little overwhelming, and it's easy. The biggest thing if you're going to ASD is and really for all trade shows, you need to look at the map before you go. You need to look at some companies before you go. So do some research.
Hmm.
Otherwise, the first time I went to the ASD, I didn't look at any maps, and we were in shoes and clothing for like 4 hours before I realized, hey, we're not approved in shoes and clothing. And then there's a whole like convenience store where it's like all generic things, and there's an area for like cigarette stores. So it's really easy to kind of like be so overwhelmed that you end up meandering and you don't have that intentionality.
Hmm.
So what I would do for ASD, if you're looking to go into wholesale, is ASD is a great place to practice conversations. So we're actually doing like a training like the day before, because those conversations are so vital. You want to have like when a salesperson, when you go to get a car, they have all these little talk tracks. In sales they call them talk tracks. So you want to be able to have practiced your response to, you don't sell on Amazon, do you?
Hmm.
And where do you sell?
Yeah.
And all the things that you're afraid that they're going to ask, you want to be able to have a polished, not robotic, but polished script. So when people ask me where I sell, I say, well, I sell on a variety of different places. We have our own website. We've had brick and mortar in the past. Now we do sell on Amazon. Is that okay? Because I don't want to waste any of your time, and I want to respect your decisions around your company. That's a different conversation than, yes, I sell on Amazon, or telling them no, right? So it makes it easier to have that conversation. So ESD is a great place to practice your conversations. I would stay focused on the gift area. There's going to be an area in the North Hall. Stay out of the cash and carry jewelry unless you're already approved in jewelry, and then stay out of the liquidation area unless liquidation is really what you want. But liquidation is a little hairy now with the intellectual property claims. I recommend that if you're moving into wholesale, you build those relationships with manufacturers as much as possible.
Mhm. I have, for the record, I have been to a Robyn Johnson networking party at ASD, and some of the brightest minds in the Amazon space and the greatest networking opportunities are at Robyn Johnson's parties. And I do have a close friend who did the sales training and found it extremely helpful. Lou, he did your sales training for ASD. And I know there are people in our group who are going to ASD, so look up Robyn Johnson. Before I let you go, there's a couple more questions. Jill wants to know, what is your favorite tool for sense checking a product you are sourcing?
Sense checking?
Like, does this make sense? I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Um, so I have a tendency to not use tools the way that they're designed to be used. So one of the ways to speed up wholesale sourcing is, we have different phases of when we're looking at straight wholesale. Our first, qualified leads, and then we want to get as many price lists as we can. From those price lists, then we have those conversations, right? So after we get as many price lists as we can to see which ones we want to go further, we don't just run them all through Price Checker 2 or through software, especially if you're in apparel, if you're in health and beauty, if you're in grocery. A lot of categories, you're going to miss all the bundles, all the multi-packs, and for the most part, that's where the money is. Smaller brands also will a lot of times use the GTIN exception to get those listings because they might not have a real UPC. So what we do is we'll jungle scout the brand. So let's say we were looking at Dixon's apparel, and then so what we would do is I would Dixon's price list, and if I see most will sell for, and then if I jungle scout it, and then I see on the net payouts are 12, 11. Okay, and I don't really see anything that would be worthwhile, then I can skip it without actually running the list. If I see that, we've got net payouts at 17, 22, 16, 19, I'm like, oh, okay, this could be good. This could be profitable. And then I have my VAs look up those items individually, but we have them do it backwards. We have them search by brand first, then by product name, and we only look up UPCs if we weren't able to find it any other way. And I want them to notate that because that means there's something really wrong with their indexing if I had to search by UPC to find them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Gino wants to know, I think I'll make this the last question. Gino wants to know, it says, now I do 95% OA on local buy and sell sites, and all these purchases are private, which means no receipts. Having said that, Amazon has said as long as your listing as used, not new, you'll be fine. So my situation is like buying a garage sale, but I guess the question is regarding like purchasing things where you can't get a receipt from.
Yes. So, so hypothetically, like with books, it seems to be fine. There have been some anecdotal things. I think even Cynthia Stein has shared that she got an inauthentic on a book, the used book. So it does happen. It's very, very rare though. Anything besides books, honestly, I would probably sell them on eBay, just because I think that, especially if you have a strong Amazon account without them, it's not worth the risk.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that that technique really, really worked 3 to 5 years ago. I think it might work again in another 3 to 5 years. Amazon, when they correct a problem, they tend to overcorrect and then back off. So they had no controls over grocery, and then they way overcorrected, and then they started to back off, on expiration dates, on some of these other things. So, in another year or two, once they've backed off this intellectual property piece, maybe they've been countersued a couple times, they probably will calm down. But I think right now it would be best to sell those on eBay. Um, or if you are going to do it, then just keep an eye on the number of inauthentics that you get, and if you start to get one or two inauthentics, then you need to pull out of that completely and get your nose clean really fast, because as you get more inauthentics, you're going to have more chance of getting suspended.
It just seems like a case where it's just not worth it to jeopardize your Amazon account in this case. Thank you, Robyn, for your time. This is an hour kind of just flew by. I am incredibly. I know Dixon is also incredibly excited to see you again in 12 days. And look forward to having you on our stage and presenting your 7 steps to 7 figures.
I think at homework, if you know that, if you've been on the fence on whether or not you should come to the conference, you should think about what is it that you're going to miss. Not like parties or whatever, but what's missing right now in your business. Is what you have right now enough to get you where you really want to go, or are you missing a piece? And anytime I go to a conference, I make a hit list of people I want to talk to, and specific questions that I'm looking to get answered. So one ASD, I was trying to figure out how I could stop paying lift gate fees for my own warehouse, because we didn't have a lift gate and we didn't have a dock, a gate, on the higher docks. So come with a couple questions that that the cost of the conference would well be offset if you got the answers to those questions. I'm always about doing everything with intentionality. I don't believe in just spending money to spend money. But I can tell you that for me, conferences have been one of the ways that have really kept us on top of what the curve is, because you start to hear, oh, I thought that was just me. Oh no, it's all Amazon sellers. So this is a system-wide problem. So I need to start thinking about how I'm going to move around that. So it's been really, really awesome for me. And I know that these guys have done some amazing things. So, but if you want to come to the event, you're excited about my session, my recommendation is do a little, I know it sounds like cheesy, but do a little journal of if time and money wasn't a consideration, what would you be doing? And then I want you to do this other piece of homework. The first one is, how much do you need to be making in order to have that life? What do you want to be doing with your time? So what things do you still want to be doing? Do you still want to be shopping, or do you want to be doing other things? And then how many people do you want on your team? Once you identify those things, then it becomes really easy to identify which opportunities are the good opportunities and which opportunities are really the distraction. Because if you only want 2 people in your business in 6 years, then, it's not a good, maybe getting a warehouse right now isn't the right move. Maybe we need to move to a more streamlined path.
I like that. Great tips on, I think that was probably a thank you for answering the question that I didn't ask, but that I think is very good for people to get a better understanding, because this will be kind of the first Amazon focused conference in Canada, so it's I'm glad you mentioned that, answered that question. How to proactively approach a conference, not just show up and okay, you guys, I paid my money, now you guys wow me, but understanding that there's so many other people right now that are maybe at a stage in their business where you want to get to. And you have access to all these people, all these amazing people, and it's going to be great networking. So again, look forward to seeing you again, Robyn, in 12 days. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for having me at the conference. I don't know if everybody else realizes how much work and love and tears and frustration can go into planning an event. So, I know that you're doing this because you love your community. And so I really, really appreciate all the work that it takes to put something like this together. So
thank you, Rob. Thank you so much. That means a lot, because Dixon and myself did not know how much work was involved to run such an event, but we're glad that we are for sure. Thank you so much again, Robyn.
No problem. I'll talk to you soon.
Have a
Bye.
good night. Bye.